Hello, Chloe.
Hi, Fearne.
Look at this book.
Look at it.
That is one sexy cover.
Thank you. I mean, as I said before, I can't actually thank you because I didn't design it. It was a brilliant penguin who designed it.
Oh my God, it just, as soon as I got the cover, I was like, I know the feeling of this book. I get it.
Yeah.
I get the feeling of this book.
Yeah. And it was interesting, actually, because early on, my editor and I, we were sort of chatting about the cover and we assumed it would be a group of people because, the book is about two couples. And then it became clear that actually it's kind of more mysterious and more intriguing to wonder who this is, who this character is.
Who is that? Do you know? Or could it be anyone?
To me, it's Izzy.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what you think. But
it could be Maggie in my head.
It could be Maggie. It could be It could be It could be anyone.
It could be anyone. But I just think everything about that cover, it totally expresses the book and I love it. So let's talk about family friends. This is so brilliant. Obviously not your first rodeo. You've written how many books? A couple of art histories, a couple of novels.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah.
But this book, which is specifically set in the south of France, as you said, two couples who go on holiday together every year. The drama ensues.
Yes.
It's brilliant. What came first, characters or location?
Characters. Very much characters. So when I was thinking about this book, I started writing it when I was trying to get pregnant and then when I was pregnant. And so I was thinking a lot about family life, including my own. And when I was a child, we used to go on these big, chaotic group holidays with my parents' friends and their kids. And I mean, they were really chaotic. I think I would hate this kind of holiday now. And the parents had sort of grown up together and in some cases shared tangled pasts. And as kids, we were, it was expected that we'd just rub along, which we mostly did. And we were left to our own devices in the way that children often are on a holiday. And we would end up sort of seeing, hearing, doing things we shouldn't. And so that's what I was thinking about, that kind of situation. And then the rest came from there.
Well, I love it. And I guess I love that it's set abroad and I love reading fiction that's set in other countries. And I guess the interesting thing about holidays is that anything can happen. Like you've just said there, your own childhood experience is knowing that as a kid, you've just got to crack on with entertaining yourselves. You can sneak about because your parents are probably drinking a bottle of wine over here. But it's not the usual. It's not the usual routine and rhythm of life at home. And also I think as an adult, even now, when I go away with my kids, you become a slightly different version of yourself. You're like holiday you.
Yeah.
So it's really, did it feel interesting to put your characters in that situation?
Yeah, it did. I think exactly like you say, it can be, I think, both liberating and maybe you do and you drink and you wear things that you wouldn't normally. But also in this particular case, I mean, they're in an incredibly beautiful place. They're in the south of France, in this crumbly chateau. It's basically a chateau. But because of the heat, there's a heat wave. I feel the heat wave here has been brilliant accidental marketing for me. I wish it hadn't continued so long, but it has been vaguely helpful. Because of that, they are kind of pressed into this house. And so they're on holiday, but at the same time, they're kind of trapped, which means that any issues, insecurities, jealousies, whatever it is that kind of bubble up between them, they're inescapable.
Yes. So. And I think that is also the case, is that you can be really good friends with someone, but until you go away with them, you don't know that person.
Kind of like living with someone regularly. I mean, even some of your closest friends, some of my closest friends, I'm not sure we could live together.
No. And you go on holiday and you're like, oh, that's how you do your morning routine.
Yeah.
And you like to eat that, like all the little things that you miss when you go for dinner or you have someone to your house and you have a cup of tea or whatever. You don't get to see all those tiny little micro moments that make up their routine. And you have to be yourself much more flexible, but also you learn so much about other people. Obviously, these four characters, they go away together every year. But this year, and I don't know, I never know with these episodes how much to give away, because there will be people listening to this who are halfway through, have just started the book. So I don't want to go too deep into plot. But obviously, stuff comes up from the past and there are certain situations they're dealing with on the hoof. And like you say, they're trapped. So it is like this sort of boiling pot. What did you want to get across with the two different couples and the dynamics that we experience as the reader?
Well, I think with these two couples, they met at university. They're now in and around 40. They're kind of at the stage of life where maybe we would expect them to have everything figured out and for life to be sort of set. But what's interesting to me, or what was interesting to me in the writing process, thinking about them, was that they have kids that are no longer tiny kids anymore. And so for the first time in a while, they've got breathing room to sort of think about or reassess who they are, what they want, where they want the rest of their lives to go. So that in itself was kind of exciting for me. And then I think just as I began to write these characters and to spend time with them, various sort of similarities and differences began to crop up between them. So the kind of financial difference, for example, one family is hosting the other. And so from the start, there's a slight power imbalance, which just kind of adds to the tension, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. So interesting, because I think when I was in my 20s, I looked at people in their 40s and I thought, they know how the world works. They understand life. They know themselves. They've lived a life beforehand. You get to your mid-40s and I think you go, you don't know anything. You almost do start again. Maybe some of it is if you've had kids that, like you say, my kids are now 11 and 13. So I am not only on holiday, but in life starting to go, oh, right, okay, I've got a little bit more headspace and they're a bit more independent. And you do start to question after that amount of motherhood, what do I like? What do I want to do? What makes me happy? And you can really see that with these characters. Again, on holiday, often, I think there should be a new term, a new phrase for a holiday with kids, because for most of their childhood, it is not a holiday for the adults.
No. So I saw something about this recently. So brilliant Alice Vincent. Do you know Alice Vincent, writer? She did a post about this recently and she said how it shouldn't be called a holiday, it should be called a trip. Because then you don't go into it thinking, I'm going to come back relaxed. I just went on a trip. And thinking of it as a trip really helped me.
Yeah, because I think you're lulled into a full sense of I'm going to relax and read some books.
No.
You do not.
No.
You do not. It's a holiday with kids it's very much a trip. But I think that was a really interesting part of it explored, seeing them with these slightly older children who are going off with varying degrees of success to try and live a sort of little teen life or a mini adult life, and they're figuring things out. I also love with the younger characters the romance, because I was a holiday romance-aholic as a teenager. My main incentive was find a boy to snog and then can they be my pen pal, because we're talking 90s here. And there is something really exciting about you're in another country, the weather's different, there are no rules, you're staying up late, you're meeting people from different backgrounds, but I loved that story.
Oh, I'm so glad, because I really love that story too. And it was kind of a controversial one, even in the editing process, just in terms of how people felt about it. But I was kind of determined that it was going to stay as it is. I mean, maybe we should say for anyone who hasn't read, but as you say, it's just very hard to do without spoilers. But there's this romance that kind of comes about through between Izzy, who is this really beautiful, intelligent, quite rebellious teenage daughter of Roland from his previous marriage, and she's on the holiday for the first time. And she's kind of an exciting character, or she was for me, because she's this stranger figure in the book. So she's
slightly rebellious.
She is rebellious, yeah. But I think she also has sort of a sweet, vulnerable side to her that kind of, in a way, Sammy, this teenage boy, the son of Maggie and Will, brings out. But they kind of help each other. I suppose their story is a bit of a coming of age story within the book.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it feels like at times this lovely little moment of relief, because the tension between the adults, the parents, is really mounting as the book continues. And you have these flashbacks to university days to look at the untangling of previous events. What did you want to get from those flashbacks? Part of me wondered if it was we look back in our 40s and we think, have I really changed that much? Have my ideas about the world and relationships and love really changed? Because that seems to be something that a couple of the characters are really having to consider on this holiday.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even it's like on the first or second page, I think Will thinks to himself, is this really the 20th year we've done this? Like, that's mad. And I felt, with the flashbacks, they felt really important to me because, I don't know, I guess in general it makes sense that you can better understand someone if you've seen glimpses of who they were before. And I think in many ways we stay the same, but I think we also, I mean, if I think back 10 years, 15 years, I've just changed so much. Yeah. But I quite liked showing these snippets of them. Also, maybe because each of the adults, as we meet them, you know, they're all kind of going through something. Yeah. They're all bringing to the holiday a bit of baggage. Something is going on behind the scenes, generally something they're not being overly open about. And so we're maybe not meeting them in the best possible light. So I think also for the reader to have empathy, there needed to be these moments of kind of warmth and like naturalness that we saw between them. Also to understand why these, you know, the respective couples are together.
Yes.
And why they're all friends.
Yeah.
Because I think otherwise you might read the book if those flashbacks weren't there and the memories weren't there and think, I don't get it. Just leave the guy.
Yeah, but the flashbacks, like you say, are so important because not only did all their friendships form, but also two of the characters, well, one of them was a professor at university who is now married to one of his past students. So there's an interesting dynamic at play even there. Why did you want to put those characters together?
I think when I was thinking about the group, like I said earlier, the book really started with the characters, and I didn't want it to be that to be so straightforward that both couples, that they were all students. I wanted, I suppose, in the same way that I ended up having one couple host another, I liked the idea of there being a bit of a power imbalance going on within the group. Also because of the different perspective that Roland brings. You know, he's 15 years older than the others. And when we meet him, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, he is grieving his ex-wife who has just died. You know, the fact that she's died is the reason Izzy, his daughter, is on this trip. And he to a degree kind of retains a bit of a separate professor-like role within the group. Yeah. For most of the holiday, he's sort of up in this like garret, trying to write this eulogy. But yeah, I think the more variety I could get into it, the better.
Yeah, and also I think having a stepkid on holiday for Lydia, you know, I have been a step parent and had my stepchildren on many, many holidays, and the dynamic is different to your own children, whether you've brought them up together or not. There is a slightly different dynamic at play, and I think, you know, it's so prevalent, blended families these days, but more often than not, we don't sort of see the intricacies of that playing out in a holiday setting or in an everyday setting, like how that feels for everybody, including the step parent who's trying to work out what the boundary is. Am I your friend? Am I your mum? Yeah. You're grieving your mum who's just passed away. How close can I get to you? It's a really interesting thing for her to try and figure out.
Yeah. I felt the same way. I mean, I'm glad it kind of came across that way as a reader, because again, from the start, it just felt right. You know, I didn't want any of these families to be too neat, because that's not really what families are. No. I mean, there are so few families that are, if any, that are neat and tidy and perfect, and we're all kind of muddling through.
We are.
And also, you know, having Izzy there is just something really great and juicy, I think, about having a stranger figure in a book, introducing a character who sees things through fresh eyes and can disrupt sort of long-held habits and traditions. So she was great.
Have you got a favourite character?
She was definitely the most fun. And she kind of reminded me, my first novel is sort of very close first person and follows a 26-year-old girl who's kind of figuring out who and what she wants to be. And spending time with Izzy reminded me of spending time with Eve, that character, in a really happy way. So yeah, I would probably say her. But I empathise possibly the most with Maggie. Yeah.
Same. I think most people will read it feeling like she's a bit of a victim to stuff going on around her, and
she's a good person. Yeah.
I mean, you don't end up leaving the book disliking any of them. You can see like all humans, we're all flawed and trying to figure things out and making mistakes and trying to right them. I don't think you leave going, they shouldn't have done this. You understand all of them and the psychology behind it. But Maggie seems like the one who is kind of like, I don't know, maybe receiving the brunt of all of these decisions that people around her are making.
Yeah, I think she is. And I think she's so, she so wants everything to be good and everything to be well and happy. And I didn't want her to come across as kind of too soft or too much of a pushover. And I think there are moments where she will surprise people, where she kind of stands up and speaks her mind. But yeah, basically she is good and kind, and still makes mistakes, but is possibly slightly less flawed than some of the other characters.
I mean, when you're writing a story like this and you've got all of these backstories and complex dynamics that you need to keep an eye on throughout the storyline, is there like an underlying message that you want the reader to leave with? Like, and the lesson learned here is this, or are you like it's up to the reader to decide what they take from how these stories unravel?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and it's a hard question. I mean, ultimately, it's up to the reader, and regardless of what I am about to say, everyone will come away from the book thinking different things, feeling different things, and that's the great thing about books, like films or whatever. But I was definitely thinking a lot while I was writing about people making mistakes and about the point at which doing a bad thing makes you a bad person. And also I was thinking about what happens next, like what happens when someone has made a mistake, whether you're family or friends. Do you just carry on because that's how life is, or do you sort of reassess and walk away? Because, I think Izzy says it at one point in the book, like, do they all like going away together, or is this just like a bad habit they can't break?
Yeah.
So that's something I was thinking about throughout, and I suppose that would be something I'd like people to be kind of pondering.
Yeah, but I think you've left that hanging in the air for people to decide. You don't get to the end of the book and think, and this is the bad person. You're like, I get it. There's these feelings from the past, and they're shit's going on, and they're trying to figure it out on the hoof, and life's really hectic, and you're trying to be a parent, and you're trying to figure out financial situations back home, and like adult life is a lot, and I think it's never flawless. There's always mistakes to be made, and like you say, it's so interesting looking at how we, I think, culturally probably see certain actions define someone as bad. That is a bad person. But actually, when you really get to know characters in a book or people in real life, it's so much more complicated than that.
Yeah. And if it wasn't, then we would just all be so hard on ourselves the whole time, because we are all making mistakes all the time.
Yeah, but
whether they're small.
I think we are hard on ourselves because we've got this black and white view of that makes you a bad person, rather than getting curious about, I wonder why that person acted out in that way, or that person made that decision. Like, what does that mean? I think it's such an interesting topic. Yeah. So let's talk about the actual writing process, because I'm always deeply fascinated and want to know from my own kind of writing how you write, where you write, what you need in place for you to write well.
Well, I would say that I probably used to be very prescriptive about how I wrote. I mean, I used to be so protective of those early hours first thing. And I think I almost had this feeling that if I didn't just like sit up in bed and start writing without seeing or hearing or thinking about anything else, somehow the writing would be diluted.
Wow. So there's something about that liminal space between like sleep and awakeness where you're That's your most imaginative hours?
Well, yes, it was. And that, you know, that time before other people start work and you start to have like the ding of emails coming in. But then I had a child, and that went out the window. Yeah. And I was like, oh, great. But I do think probably, I mean, what do you think? I think parenthood probably has made me, definitely has made me less precious, and maybe has made me more efficient.
You have to be.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they're at nursery, you're like, well, we're paying for nursery, and I feel a bit bad that they're at nursery, so I better...
You have to work.
Yeah,
you use the small bits of time really, really... I think it forces you to actually push yourself into places that you would never normally go. Like, I was the same as you, not necessarily with writing, but any... work. Like, I had a real routine before I had kids where I'd get up, I'd have a coffee. I used to smoke a cigarette back in the day too. It's like back in the day. And I would get all my work emails done, and it'd be the first thing I did, and I'd feel all organised and bum, I'm done. And then I had a baby, and I was like, what? I don't get to like have my coffee and do... I have... What? And now, obviously, I'm so deep into parenting, I just work around their routines and you manage it, and you make things happen, but you have to become so efficient with the little bits of time that you have.
Yeah. And I think, again, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think the way that you write, like I've written all three of my novels quite differently, because the first one I wrote when I was still in a full-time job, so it was really in scraps of time here and there, and the writing is quite scrappy in a way that really suited the story. And then the second one I wrote during COVID, when I didn't have much work on, and it's sort of a slower, more thoughtful book, which again kind of worked out well for what was going on. And this one I don't know, kind of was a bit in between. I'm an art critic as well as a novelist, so I'm freelance, and I'm sometimes writing, you know, really quick fire pieces, and sometimes I'm working at a slower pace on a book. But this one felt like kind of a happy medium, and a bit more, I guess, a way of working that is a bit longer lasting. Yeah. Maybe now, because I also am in this phase, and like this phase is what it's going to be for a while.
18 years.
Yeah, exactly, for a while. Oh, God, fun.
I mean, obviously not 18, maybe like 13?
Yeah.
Something like that.
He'll be self-sufficient within a few, won't he?
They're 4. They better be.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, but it's so interesting how then that can start to inform how you write, and you learn new things about yourself through that process. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I think it can be really just like a happy coincidence. I think the way that it works out. Yeah.
One thing I really am left with after reading this book is this feeling of a world that you've created that's still sort of existing somewhere. And I don't always get that with novels. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, that was good, and I leave it. And I can remember fragments of characters or storylines, but I can so picture the chateau. Yeah. I can so picture or like feel the heat of it. I can just imagine that whole world existing somewhere. Mm-hmm. I very much had this when I read Candice Carty-Williams' book more recently too, that these people, I might sort of like bump into them in the street. I can really imagine them. And I wonder if you were cognizant of that whilst you were writing it, and if you know what that little magic ingredient is that creates that. Because it's not every novel that you're left feeling like that's a world that exists somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I guess... when it comes to both the characters and the setting, what I sort of love when I'm writing and also when I'm reading is just really digging, like burrowing into all the details, every detail, sights, sounds, smells. I don't know whether it's because I write about art, but I often find my writing ends up being quite visual. So I guess that helps when it comes to setting. But yeah, really thinking about how the characters feel as well. I mean, I'll tell you, the place is real.
Oh, wow.
So, or at least it's heavily inspired by a real
Yeah, well, that helps
setting.
Because you know the smell of it, the feel of it, the sounds when you walk through a corridor, like you know it.
Exactly, yeah. So that can only help.
I mean, there is that old-fashioned phrase, write what you know, and I think there is something for it, whether it's an experience or a place that you can really bring it to life because you know every little detail. Like, you know, it's part of you, every little detail of that place. And that does help build that whole picture.
Yeah. And I think also with the characters, like whether or not you're conscious of it, whether or not I'm conscious of it when I'm writing, I think they end up being kind of, it's like that surrealist game, The Exquisite Corpse, where you sort of like do a head and then you turn it over and you end up kind of like picking and choosing little bits from whether it's people you know or people you've kind of interacted with at some point. I mean, there are definitely things that crop up in the book, like the Roland obsessively opening and closing the windows, that my stepdad was like, right, so that's me, is it?
That's so funny.
And I was like, well, I guess it kind of is.
That's so brilliant. But of course, your brain just stores it all and thinks, pop that in.
Because you think that's such a great tick. Such a, and you know, something that marks you out and says a lot about you as a person.
Did you find that you had a pretty steady flow when you were writing, or were there bits where you were, I don't know, moments of distraction or moments where you're like, I can't get over this road bump?
When I was writing, it really did flow. With this book, had trouble starting in the first place. So I didn't experience the dreaded second book syndrome.
Yeah.
I think because I wrote my second novel before my first one was out. So I was kind of still in that like blissful, ignorance is bliss, not thinking about readers, reviewers, what people want, just thinking about what I wanted to say. And with this one, I was kind of like, it's my third novel. If I'm going to write a third novel, it needs to be really good. It needs to be really original. It needs to be this, and this. And I was paralyzed for a while before I started writing. And I kind of ended up doing things that don't come naturally to me as a writer. Like, I started really trying to plot it all out. And I think I work better when I have a vague sense of what's going on, what's going to happen, but I basically follow the characters. And it was only when I just sat down, I think I got to a point where I thought, okay, I just need to spend time with them on the page and see if this is going to work or not, because the planning and the plotting was making me lose my confidence. Yeah. And then when I started writing, I was happy.
Sometimes it is just, you just have to open the laptop and just start. And I'm so with you on this, because I'm usually pretty fluid. I've only written one novel, but my non-fiction, I'm normally like, I know exactly how this is going to go, and I'm so excited that all I want to do is that. And it flows, and I'm so excited about it. I'm in this weird pickle at the moment where I started writing fiction, and then life happened, and some big life stuff happened, and then I didn't write for ages, and then I was like, I can't go back to it. I don't remember it, and it scared me. So I started another book that was another good idea that I thought, I'm committed to this. Then I started to lose confidence, not in the book, but in like how I would talk about it, because it was quite a dark subject matter. So now I've gone back to the first one.
Well, maybe they will end up evolving in tandem.
Maybe.
And feeding off one another.
But I've never done that. I'm usually quite like Virgo, organised, and this feels like chaos. Yeah. But I was so scared to even go back to either of them at one point. Literally last week, I just watched. Have you seen the film The Invite that Olivia Wilde?
No, but I'm desperate to see it.
You're going to love it.
It sounds so good.
It's very 4 characters in a dynamic. It's brilliant. It's 2 couples. It's genius.
Okay.
And I felt so inspired afterwards. I started rewriting the start of this book at like 10 o'clock at night, which is the most. I go to bed at like 9:30.
Okay, good.
So I was like, who am I? I've never written a word after like 11 a.m. Like, who am I? But I felt so inspired by it. So now all I need to do is just open my laptop and just start again. So I'm back, hopefully, in a flow of doing it. But I've never had that. Like, it was a sort of a paralysed feeling of I can't do it. I can't go near either of them. But I'm over it now, and I'm back to it, thank God.
Well, I'm excited for you that you are back in it.
Me too.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I think sitting with an idea is such a valuable thing to do.
Yeah.
But there also is such a thing as overthinking.
Yes.
And over-planning. Yeah, and you do ultimately, even if it's bad, like if you've got something on the page, you have something to work with. Whereas when you've got a blank page, that is terrifying.
It's the worst feeling ever. Yeah. It's the pits.
Yeah.
Well, look, we have all loved reading this book. The whole team have read it,
Thank you.
and we've just all been chatting about it and loving that level of escapism to this chateau in the south of France with these brilliant characters. So thank you so much for writing such an enjoyable book. What I'll end on is asking you, where is your happy place?
Oh, I don't know if this is just going to sound really cheesy, but it's the first thing that's popped into my head.
That's the answer then.
It would be with my husband and our son.
Yeah,
wherever that may be, at home. As long as it's not in that awful hour after nursery before bed when it's like hell.
Any hour but that hour.
Any hour but that hour.
I hear you. I get that. Well, look, thank you so much, Chloe, and congratulations on your brilliant book.
Thank you so much for having me.